Hello and welcome to the Doctor Who Show. I'm Dave.
And I'm Rob.
And this is our hot take discussion about episode 6 of the new series, Rogue. Rob, are you ready for this?
Dave, I'm ready for this.
Are you a bit of a rogue?
I've been called that from time to time, yes.
I can believe that. Before we dive into our word for the week for episode 6, Rob, we probably should just mention that when we did our hot take last time, there were a few moments where we sat there and went, this didn't quite make sense and we think we've missed something here. I've got to say it was about half an hour after we'd put out our hot take and I had Phil from Silence of Audio get in touch and go, you missed that they're all a bunch of space racists. And I just wanted to say, we absolutely did miss that. We knew we'd missed something, but we didn't get that. We'll have a long discussion, I suspect, about that episode and all the fallout from that when we get to our end of season proper discussion. But we've had some really fantastic feedback from our listeners in the last week, haven't we, Rob?
Oh, absolutely. And I will back you up there. We were talking about this amongst ourselves long before any of this feedback lobbed in. But such is the way with these things, people were still coming to the episode 4 or 5 days later and then saying, I think you guys missed something. And we're like, yes, we did. And some of these emails were really fantastic, and we will make use of them in that hot take. Unfortunately, not all of them, because there are a ton of them in comments on Facebook and Twitter and all of that as well. Lovely comments, and most people were really lovely. Got a few negative ones in the background, but we won't dwell on those.
No, absolutely. And the same with the engagements on Twitter. There was lots of just genuine, okay, so you missed it. Like, what does that mean? How does that reflect on the episode? All that sort of thing. So really, really good discussion to have. We weren't alone, certainly, in missing that part of the episode, particularly on the first watch. But yeah, look, we'll have a really in-depth discussion, I think, about Dot and Bubble when we're doing our big wrap-up of the season in... When's our June episode drop? Is it 3 weeks' time? 4 weeks' time?
Yeah, the 30th, I think.
30th. Wow, it's not that far away. Okay. Rob, we'll get into episode 6. Rogue, not yes. Rouge, Rogue. Just spell it correctly. What's your word of the week?
Dave, my word of the week is first.
First. My word of the week is homecoming.
Okay. Interesting.
So we have Rogue, high level, 10,000 feet up, looking down at this episode, Rob. What's your hot take?
Dave, this is a frustrating episode. I think all the ingredients are there for a really solid, fun adventure that the broader audience, and by which I mean 8 out of 10 people, most people, Dave, would really lap up. But like most of the season so far, it chooses to push hard into areas that will play well to a section of the fandom, but I think will leave the broader fandom rolling its eyes a bit to varying degrees. And I'm not sure that's smart Doctor Who writing. I think Doctor Who has always done better when it's casting its net more widely. I
can see exactly where you're coming from, and nothing in there I think he's wrong or bizarre, or I'm going, oh my God, what did Rob watch?
Well, I have examples of small stuff and big stuff in that area.
Absolutely. I suspect we've got similar notes in that vein, but I will say this is competing for me as my favourite of the season.
Wow, that's excellent.
I just enjoyed watching this. I saw a couple of faults, and there's some stuff in there we can discuss, but I've just got to say, maybe I'm the section of fandom this was aiming at this time. I don't know, but it worked for me, and I just had a really fun time.
Okay. Or even a subsection of the section of fandom that it's aiming at. Who can say, you know? But, like, even stuff as minor, Dave, as getting hung up on cosplay, like, there's a term some in the audience will know. They love their cosplay. And even having these aliens into the idea of cosplay, even using the word cosplay, it's like, no, this is too on the nose. It's plain, it's direct, it's boring, it's not couched with any sort of subtlety. You do the story, Dave, without them saying cosplay 5 times a minute in those scenes, and you leave it to the audience to deduce, it's almost like these guys have come to Earth to, I don't know, cosplay. You know, I think that's far more interesting writing when you leave some of it to the audience.
I didn't have a problem with that. I am curious to find out when we sort of go out into the world after watching this and after recording this, and I'm curious to find out how well known a phrase cosplay is outside of fandom. But I do think it's relatively mainstream. Look, was the writing on that particularly subtle and nuanced? No, but I mean, you know, I've kind of given up on that.
Yeah, I mean, Alien's talking about cosplay, but, you know, the Bridgerton thing is another. It's like, this is Bridgerton. Wow, have you seen Bridgerton? This is Bridgerton. You know, not only is that going to date so badly in a decade's time, but why not do something that reminds the audience of Bridgerton without actually signposting it and let the audience just have that moment for itself? Aha! Doctor Who is doing an episode of Bridgerton, and then they can laugh and clap and have that little moment of pleasure where they feel they got the reference without it being spoon-fed. That's another small example of this stuff.
Yeah, and I do agree with you on that one. I did write it down. I actually put a tweet out earlier this week where I said, hey, everyone's telling me that this is the Bridgerton episode of Doctor Who, and I have literally not seen a minute of Bridgerton.
No.
What do I need to know? And a couple of people, Phil, Brendan, a couple of others did sort of say, oh, here's a few things you need to know about it. I thought that's great, but the first reference I sort of got, okay, that's the topical reference, that's fine. But by the third one, it actually was annoying me because it started to feel like if you haven't seen Bridgerton, well, you're not going to get this one. This is written for Bridgerton fans, and we're going to have lots of references. I'm going to be talking about it. And if you don't know the lore or the background of Bridgerton, then maybe you're missing out on something. It did feel a little bit like, you know, there's a way to do this, as you say, Rob, where those in the know can go, I got that. Mm-hmm. And this was saying, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. So again, that ties into what I'm talking about. In this particular case, the people who are really into Bridgerton, whereas there's people like you and me who have never watched an episode of it in our lives, have no intention of doing so. But that was smaller stuff, Dave. I have a bigger one, and this might really rip us into the episode proper. The bigger one for me is the Doctor's romance with Rogue. Mm-hmm. Now, I know we only have 45 minutes to tell the story. Well aware of that. And if you want to have flirtation between these characters, fine. You know, but we were barely into these guys talking to one another, and Rogue was ready to kill the Doctor, you know, a minute ago, and now they're suddenly having a deep and meaningful conversation, and they're about to kiss. And I'm like, what? I would have preferred a much slower, I'm getting to know you, and I think I like you, and maybe there's a bit of a spark, I don't know, you know, that sort of vibe. And then at the end, the Doctor cries, because yes, it's another crying episode, Dave, I'm sure you'll want to talk about that. You know, and then Rogue wipes away the tear. We realise these guys like one another, but there hasn't been any time, and now Rogue has to sacrifice himself. Then they kiss. Boom. That would have felt more organic to me. But that earlier scene just reeked to me of, we'd really like the Doctor to be into this guy, and it would play really well with a particular part of the audience. So, hey, you know, let's just forget they've barely met, forget anything remotely realistic. We're just going to make them deeply into one another right here, right now, and almost kiss at the first available opportunity in the narrative. It felt too rushed for me. It actually felt a bit silly. And let me add, it would be the same for me if this was a guy and a girl or two girls or whatever. It wasn't a sexuality thing here. It was just how quickly that first kiss almost happened. It just felt weird.
Right, okay.
There we go. I'll take a breath and have a cigarette. You go for it.
You take a breath, I'll regroup, and we'll go in there. Look, yeah, a number of points on that. And first, no, absolutely, Rob, I know that it would never be an issue with you, you know, being two guys. I know that that's not your issue, and, you know, very, 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 very clear on that. I have said in the past, and I maintain my view, that I like my Doctor asexual. I don't like my Doctor flirting. I didn't like it when Tennant did it. I don't like it particularly here. Yeah. And again, that goes across, you know, multiple Doctors, multiple genders. All that said, I thought if you're going to do it, and you know, after the last 19 years, I've kind of accepted it's happening. If you're going to do it, I actually thought it was done really well. And what you saw as very rushed, I actually saw as hitting a lot of really cool beats, but also adding a certain amount of ambiguity. So there was that first, we meet each other and we kind of, you know, think each other's a bit hot, a bit cute. That's really good. Then we have the getting to know each other a bit and maybe seeing the good and the bad of each other. Then we have the, I know who you are a bit more. Then we had the, would you like to come back and see my place? Then we sort of had a little bit more of a learning about each other. And then we had the adventure. But then you got the scene where Rogue proposes, and again it's cleverly done, and I did get sort of Aztec vibes almost here a bit.
Sure,
it was done in such a way that if you are fully in the moment and you're going, these guys really, really are into each other, maybe he really is proposing and maybe the Doctor really is reacting, you can. If you just want to see it all as part of the drama, the fake drama that they were doing as a distraction, you equally can. Or if maybe it was somewhere in between the two, where, yes, what they were saying and doing was deliberately amped up for the drama to create the distraction, but there was maybe some real tension underneath it. That's there as well. And you go through. So I actually thought that it hit, boom, 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 the beats of a relationship sufficient for me to think, okay, for, as you say, Rob, a 40-something minute episode, they've done this okay.
It's really hard to tell, isn't it? Because past New Who Doctors, like Tennant was quite a good-looking man, like in that geeky sort of way. The Smith Doctor was always sort of horny, but both of them still had that alien nature of the Doctor where they didn't quite use it properly. Whereas Ncuti seems to be very well aware that I'm an attractive man, and look at me, honey, sort of thing. I'm talking about the proposal scene now, and I don't know whether it was a real proposal and that's the moment where the Doctor sort of can't commit. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying it well.
Yeah, no, I think you do. And I think it does come down to the fact that deliberately, I'm sure, it is ambiguous as to exactly what is going on with both characters there. Hopefully RTD hasn't ruined that with the whatever these commentaries are he does, where he says, well, actually, what was really going on? And everyone's like, oh, okay, well, thanks, Mr. Word of God. Okay.
Is that canon now that you've said that?
Yeah. Yes, no, actually, he's really in love with Davros. Hopefully it stays ambiguous, and I think it works really, really well in that sense. I do need to make a comment that it's not the first time the Doctor has kissed a man. It is not, in fact, the second time the Doctor has kissed a man, because the Doctor first kissed a man back in 1996 in the new adventure Bad Therapy.
Okay.
So I just want to get that on the record, and I'll no doubt tweet that a couple of times over the next week.
And then, of course, in Parting of the Ways. both
of them called Jack.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned the Aztecs there for a moment, Dave. I do have a little throwback line to Hartnell not liking being addressed as Doc, and there was a line from Ncuti in this one about not being addressed as Doc as well.
Yes, no, that was very, very nice. To continue on from what you were saying there, Rob, I did write down here that this is a different Doctor. This is a Doctor for 2024, and there are aspects of that character that I will never be able to reconcile with the classic Doctor, and that's something that I have to accept. Mm-hmm. But also, I think that this was finally the point in the season where I started to really get who the 15th Doctor was. I think that this was a good balance between the way out there sort of character he's played in a couple of episodes and the really constrained, smaller performance that he's given in a couple of episodes. I think this was a neat mix of the two, and that was really, really strong. I noted that we were told in The Giggle that this was going to be a different sort of Doctor. This is a Doctor who's much more comfortable with himself. This is a Doctor who's had some, time on a beach in Fiji or something to relax and, find himself. So it all in the narrative makes sense. Is it what I would do if I was the showrunner? No. But what I would do if I was the showrunner would get 500,000 viewers on HBO, not, even the 4 million that it's getting on the BBC. So I accept that. I think he looked good in this. I think when we had that flashback to him watching that horrible orange jumper from whatever episode that was, I just thought, wow, that was terrible. He looks like the Doctor here. I thought it was really, really nicely done. And not that I've disliked Ncuti up until now, but this was the one where I've gone, I get this Doctor now.
Well, the Doctor got out there a lot more this episode, Dave, which...
That definitely helped.
Which may feel that way after 2 Doctor Light episodes in a row, but generally I think he was the A-plot, and Doctor Who revolved a bit more around the character of TV's Doctor Who this week, which is good. I think it's what people like to see. I think it's why people watch the show. I mean, it takes me back to the Capaldi era, and how we had that run of stories that were basically Clara Who. And Moffat seemed to think the audience would find that amazing because he found his creation of Clara so amazing. But no, the audience likes Doctor Who to star Doctor Who. So I think anyone who had that complaint this season up until now would have had a better time with this at least. And for you, I think probably just having him in the story more has helped you to gel more with the character. That would be my takeaway.
No, I think that's really, really accurate. That's really, really fair. Another big point from me, Rob, I loved the opening.
Okay.
I just thought, hey, we're in a proper story now. We've got a couple of things going on. There was no dull 10 minutes before we work out what's happening. It's just like, right, we're in this sort of period. We're doing this sort of thing. Oh, he's an alien. They're the baddies. They're taking over bodies. Let's go. I thought it was a fantastic cold open. And that pace just, I felt, did not let up at all across the episode, and it was just a really involving adventure. And Rob, when I think of Doctor Who, I love the idea of adventure, and this gave it to me.
Yeah, this was a very tight 45 minutes, and I'm surprised this era hasn't been mined a lot more in Doctor Who, Dave. Not just because of the recent Bridgerton phenomenon, with some parts of the audience, as we discussed earlier, but you think of the big Jane Austen productions of the last 20 years plus that have been on people's minds. And, it's an era that the BBC, or just British production companies in general, can produce the out of. And yet it's not really been a Doctor Who kind of era. Thin Ice, maybe, if you cast your mind back. It just hasn't been that much of an era in Doctor Who, and I think it's a good era to do in Doctor Who.
No, you're absolutely right. It worked really, really well, and Gatwa particularly looked really, really good in the role.
Definitely. I do think this would have worked better in a longer season, 10 episodes at least, but preferably 13, like the good old days. And I know this isn't the first hot take where I've said something along those lines, so I'm starting to think it's not really the episode I'm commenting on when I say this, but the length of the season. I don't think these seasons are breathing properly, Dave. We've had episodes we believe have been shuffled about. We've had episodes that might have felt better with something else around them. We have all this money, and yet we're only making 8 episodes. It's a bit odd to me.
It's a comment I've heard elsewhere as well, where when you go back to the first RTD series, and there was a really clear pattern to them and a really clear process of, we have the nice safe opening, we go to the past, we go to the future, we have a two-parter with a returning monster, we then have some standalones, we then have the big scary two-parter, and then, build to the finale. Like, there was a thing there, and you're right, this season doesn't feel like it's had any structure.
No, none at all. Speaking of no structure, my notes are very unstructured. I've put a note down here. It was an interesting move to lose the Troughton Doctor and show the Scream of the Schalke Doctor instead, when we saw all the ex-doctors. Was this a really loose thing, Dave? Like, we kind of sort of have this other doctor in the lore, let's throw him in for shits and giggles? Or was it trying to suggest something deeper, like maybe Pat never existed in this universe and it was Richard E. Grant all along? I don't know.
So was it Richard E. Grant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The doctors were out of order to some degree, but after
Yes.
Hartnell came Richard E. Grant, yeah.
Okay, I didn't recognise that it was Richard E. Grant. Does that mean it's Richard E. Grant as the Schalke Doctor or Richard E. Grant as the Curse of Fatal Death Doctor?
Well, he didn't have that weird sort of wig on like the Schalke Doctor, so maybe it was the other one.
Yeah, so look, I didn't recognise him. That's the first that I sort of realised that's who it could be. I thought for a moment it could be Michael Jaston, but then it wasn't.
It looked a bit like him, though.
It did. I kind of took that as almost a troll.
Right.
Like almost just, let's just put this in there because we know the fans will get, upset and worked up. There was a time when I would have got upset and worked up about it, but, I've just given up on the whole, who's a doctor and who's not. We've had so many variations now, or variants, as Marvel would probably say, that I'm just like, sod it. Have another doctor. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that place too. Once upon a time it meant a lot to me because that's how it was presented to us. But now that things have changed, now that the Doctor isn't asexual anymore, that's another example of it. You've just got to kind of roll with it because that's how things are now. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's not what I would do as a showrunner, but what I would do as a showrunner would appeal to us, and not many other people. So I get it. Rob, we've had many examples over the time that we've been doing these hot takes where there's been some big piece of guest casting that you or me or both of us have gone, look, we think they're big in the UK, but don't really know them. So allow me a moment to fanboy over the fact that Jonathan Groff was in this one. I remember seeing and loving Jonathan Groff when he was in Glee. I saw him in Taking Woodstock. He was fantastic in the TV series and the spin-off movie Looking. He was great in Knock at the Cabin. I was there fanboying when he was dating Zachary Quinto. So, this is an actual piece of star casting that, for once, I get to be excited about, and I just want to enjoy that.
Oh, I find that's excellent, Dave, because I don't know him from a bar of soap. So our roles are reversed for a change in this example. I hear people say, this episode has Jonathan Groff, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
So even though you didn't really know much about him, how did you find him and his performance?
Oh, look, Rogue was a cool character. I think it's hard not to be cool when you're a bounty hunter or some other kind of one-man band and you've got your own cool little spaceship and you're out there doing dangerous things for cash and all that sort of stuff.
He's like a gay Mandalorian.
Yeah, Yes, actually. It's kind of hard to screw that kind of character up. And the whole find me thing at the end was a nice touch. Maybe that's going to go somewhere. I mean, the Doctor sort of shoots it down, talking about how many dimensions there are. And I do wonder where you would take it if the Doctor and Rogue are really into one another and they meet up again and there's nothing to artificially separate them next time, like at the end of this episode. Where do you go with it? Possibly they have a dalliance, but then Rogue's background and profession is something the Doctor can't commit to. Maybe, I don't know, I'm sort of thinking way ahead of things. I don't even know if they're going to meet up again, but I liked the character and yeah, I was happy with the way he went out too.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a really good character. He was performed really well. I believed him. I bought into the ending, even though the ending was a little bit of a cliche. He made it work. Yeah, look, I think the Find Me, I very much doubt that's a planned, he's going to come back and do this, but I think it was definitely it allows a bit of hope, which means that a otherwise pretty fun episode didn't end on a real downer. It was a somber note, but it wasn't a downer because it was the hope existed. But also, it's like, look, if this goes really well and Jonathan Groff's free again, hey, we can bring him back.
Yeah, cool.
The sound levels issue was back this week, Rob. It's been pretty good this season, but I did think this one, the music, it wasn't just the music, it was the music, meant that I couldn't always hear the dialogue. That was annoying.
Yeah, I had to play with the volume a few times because I'm watching it relatively early in the morning. You know, people are still asleep in this house, so I have to sort of have it going up and down at times. And
we had the crying Doctor, as you mentioned, twice. I don't like it. Maybe this is just Shooty's idea of how the Doctor is. Okay, I mean, it's no big deal, but whatever.
I just find it weird that he is meant to be the chilled out Doctor who's put everything behind him and he still does this. I know I've said this in past hot takes as well, but it keeps happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is an iteration of the Doctor that is more in touch with human feelings, so maybe that's a part of it. As I say, I don't need it, but, you know, I'm not going to cancel the show over that.
Yeah. The Childer, Dave, I think were interesting for the most part. The idea of going to an alien planet and taking part in a time period that interests you, you know, even if it involves murdering people to fit in, I think that's really neat. But it started to unravel a bit for me when it becomes that they'd like to take over royalty and rule the country and destroy the planet. And I think, why? If you like the planet so much that you want to go and cosplay there, why would you destroy it? And if you're an advanced alien species living in the 19th century, even as royalty, that's going to get old after a while. Wouldn't your goal to be to jump in and have some fun and then nick off again? You know, maybe do another time period that you love, not take over the planet and just wreck it for all time. That sort of plot towards the end came out of left field for me, because earlier on it was just like, oh, they're just in this period just causing some havoc, but it's just confined. I guess they had to up the stakes to justify what was going on and how they were going to be taken out and thrown off into this other dimension. That didn't quite land for me.
I think it was absolutely necessary. And in a slightly more touchy-feely era of Doctor Who where, you know, there are no monsters, there are just people we haven't met, I think it was important to actually show that there was a certain amount of maliciousness to these aliens and that they weren't just, you know, tourists having a good time and maybe crossing a few lines, or they weren't just misunderstood, they were actually bad and they were proper monsters. And I like a proper monster in Doctor Who, so I'm all for it.
Very good.
Well, we've been talking for a while. It's definitely time to go to the Sports Desk.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Sports Desk. Listeners, if you've heard us before, you'll know this is where we talk about our player of the week, our foul of the week, and our play of the week. Rob, kick us off. What was your play of the week?
Dave, it was almost My Name's Bond, Molecular Bond. But no, it's Ruby getting zapped. I was instantly dragged into like, oh wow, okay, how are we going to get out of this one? And I love that sort of stuff. And the Doctor's reaction, him going all dark and being happy that the aliens are long-lived because it means they're going to suffer for longer when he gets to them. Great! This was the part of the episode where I sat up the straightest, I felt pulled in, especially as I knew the next two-parter is Ruby-centric, and I thought, are they going to do something clever with this? I was all over that.
No, that was a really good moment, and absolutely, Doctor Who is really good when you have those proper how do they get out of this one moments.
Yep.
And that really felt like a how do they get out of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your play?
My play, I'm going to go very, very personal. And Rob, I'm not somebody who normally talks about the feels and my heart throbbing as I watch Doctor Who, but the moment when the Doctor took Rogue into his TARDIS,
Yeah.
I just thought, Doctor Who's doing a nice little gay romance. The Doctor's met a really cool guy, and it's played by Jonathan Groff, and now he's really got that sort of, I like you enough that I want to show you my place. And then he comes in and he starts singing Imagination from Willy Wonka, which is just a wonderful, wonderful song that I absolutely love. And in that moment, I lost all my cynicism, I lost all my hard-heartedness, and I just thought, this is so lovely. I'm really enjoying this. And it was just a lovely moment.
That's beautiful. And it ties in, funnily enough, to Ncuti Gatwa once saying to his agent, if you could get me anything, get me Doctor Who or Willy Wonka or something. And here he was singing Willy Wonka in Doctor Who.
Absolutely. And look, I'm glad that we got Timothée Chalamet as Willy Wonka. But yeah, that was a really lovely moment. I'll keep going with my foul of the week because it's something we've already mentioned, and that was the multiple references to Bridgerton. As I said in the episode, it went beyond just a cutesy, hey, we're doing Bridgerton, to, okay, if you haven't seen Bridgerton, you're missing out. What's your problem? And it just started to feel a little bit sort of like a bit of a shove in the face for me.
Okay. My foul is also Ruby getting zapped. Because when it's revealed how she survived, I could have thrown something at the TV, Dave. I was like, no. You don't get to suggest she's been zapped. Then in the replay, there's no zap. No, if you show us a zap the first time around with lights and sound extending out into the hallway, there has to be that same zap the second time around when you show the scene from Ruby's point of view. Otherwise, you're just flat out cheating and you're not very good at writing. They could have had the cutaway and Ruby just screamed, for example, so that when we see the replay, she just screams and that's exactly what happened the second time around. No issues. But to cut away and suggest she's been zapped and then in a later explanatory replay there's no zap at all, no. That's cheap, it's cheesy, it's nasty writing, it's a foul.
It was a bit of a cheat, yep, I agree with that. Keep us going with your player of the week.
Dave, you might be happy with this. My player of the week is Jonathan Groff. As I said, I don't know him from a bar of soap, but for me, all I had was what was there on screen, and it was a semi-Jack Harkness kind of guy, loose morality, small beat-up spaceship, likes the Doctor a great deal. But unlike Barrowman's performance, Groff seemed very grounded here. He seemed pretty realistic to me, insofar as a space-age bounty hunter on TV can be realistic to us. I thought he was very good, so Groff for me.
And it's a snap from me, as you probably expected. Look, I do know Jonathan Groff from a bar of soap. It's a bar of soap that I've known and loved for many, many years, and I enjoyed seeing him in the show. But he genuinely did do a really good job. I thought it was just a great character and a great performance.
Fantastic.
Before we go to our final letter grade, words of the week, Rob, you said first.
Yes, first, as in this was kind of baby's first Doctor Who adventure. It was very basic, let's face it. Back in time, doing the kind of setting Doctor Who does so well. Some aliens are at a party, there's some shape-shifting, we flush out those bad guys and we vanquish them with someone else's tech that they've conveniently brought along. The end. It's not a very complex story. And as I wasn't buying into the window dressing on top of that, of like, oh look, they said cosplay, oh look, they played Kylie Minogue, oh look, the Doctor kissed a man, there wasn't that much here for me. So it was adequate, and I dare say it will play better for the audience it's aiming for, which is really great for them. I mean, really great for them. It's lovely when TV feels made just for you. But it wasn't for me, and I return to the question of whether that's smart Doctor Who writing in the long run. I'm not sure. It's a 6.5 out of 10 for me.
We're very close to a snap there, Rob, because my word of the week was Homecoming, and I did feel as this drew to an end that this was, for me, Doctor Who coming home. Wow. I think that this season has had some episodes I've liked and some episodes I've not liked, but the ones I've liked, it's been more of a respect. I'm really interested in what they did there, or they did something a bit different there, or they went over here and did something a bit confusing. Whereas this, as you said, Rob, just felt like Doctor Who just coming home, an adventure in time and space with monsters and excitement and really wild things going on. Good guest cast, good role for the companion, the
Good
Doctor
setting.
having fun, good setting. I just thought this is homecoming Doctor Who for me, and it'll be interesting to see how I feel about them all when we get to our end of the season discussion. But for the moment, I'm giving this one an A. If I said to myself, is this the best episode of the season, it wouldn't just be an easy yes it is. But when I look at what I would take any marks off for, I can't find anything. Whereas with 73 Yards and Boom, I could find fault, even though I gave them both an A-. So I've got to give it that half a mark, just a little bit higher. And something I want to come back to when we talk in a few weeks' time, I reckon this would have been the best opener of all the 6 episodes we've seen so far.
That's a really great point. Yeah. And look, I think we're in the same ballpark here, because although the window dressing wasn't to my taste, it wasn't a fault. It wasn't a particular foul, whereas I can point out faults and fouls in those other episodes we were talking about. So, yeah, although our scores are a little off, I think broadly we're in a similar sphere here, Dave.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think we both enjoyed it as a good, straightforward, fun Doctor Who adventure.
It definitely was, yeah.
But it was a Doctor Who adventure that included Jonathan Groff, Willy Wonka, and Kylie. So maybe it was aimed more at me than you.
Yeah, possibly.
Possibly. But look, it's always been fun to chat. Now, we will be back tomorrow afternoon with episode 2 of our semi-regular Gin and TARDIS specials, where myself, Mark and Richard have watched the Twin Dilemma over a few drinks and then give our thoughts on that. And then we'll be back in a week's time for another hot take.
Absolutely, we will.
Until then, I've been Dave.
And I've been Rob.
And we'll be speaking many times over the next few weeks.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.